Hi, everyone. Welcome to Crosswinds Online. I'm Sarah, and I am so glad that you're here today. We are a real-life community that has largely pivoted to online gatherings during this season, but more on that later. The first thing we want to do together is worship. This song we're about to sing together is about agreeing with God in good times and in bad, or as Jody taught us last week, in consolation and in desolation. The word amen means so be it, and that's our way of saying yes to God in all of his mystery. So here, as a church family, we say that we are opening our hands to what God has and trusting him with our agreement to his will. So let's sing together.
Father of kindness, Father of kindness, you have poured out grace. You brought me out of darkness, you have filled me with peace. Giver of mercy, you're my help in time of need. Lord, I can't help but sing faithful. Faithful you are. Faithful forever you will be. Faithful you are. And all your promises are yes and amen. All your promises are yes and amen. Beautiful Savior, beautiful Savior, you have brought me near. Pulled me from the ashes, you have broken every curse. Blessed Redeemer, you have set this captive free. Lord, I can't help but sing. Yeah. Promises are yes and amen. Come on, shout that out. All your promises. All your promises are yes and amen. Faithful you are. Faithful forever you will be. Faithful you are. All your promises are yes and amen. And all your promises are yes and amen. Oh, I'm resting in your promises, 'cause you are who you say you are. And you say you're my protector, you're my redeemer, you're my provider. And I will rest in your promises, my confidence is your faithfulness. And I will rest singing that. And I will rest. Promises, my confidence. Oh, His faithfulness. And I will rest in your promises, my confidence. Oh, I love you. Faithfulness. Shout it out. And I will rest in your promises, my confidence is your faithfulness. And I will rest in your promises, my confidence is your faithfulness. Faithful, faithful, you are faithful, forever you will be faithful, you are. Oh, all your promises are yes and amen. Faithful, faithful, you are faithful, forever you will be faithful, you are. Oh, and all your promises are yes and amen. Oh, and all your promises are yes and amen. Shout it out. And all your promises are yes and amen. And all your promises are yes and amen. Daily, daily I surrender. Grace for today is all that I need. Oh, surprised by a mercy that's new every morning. Awaken my soul to sing. Oh, awaken my soul to sing. I will trust where you lead. I will trust, and I can't see. Morning by morning, great is your faithfulness to me. Breath by breath, overtaken by wonder. One step at a time when I'm overwhelmed. Oh, strength for today and bright hope for tomorrow. Oh, awaken my soul to sing. Yeah, awaken my soul to sing. I will trust where you lead. I will can't see. Morning by morning, great is your faithfulness to me. I will trust where you lead. I will trust. I can't see. Morning by morning, great is your faithfulness to me. And I will trust with all my heart. You are good, always are. Morning by morning, great is your faithfulness to me. Oh, morning by morning, great is your faithfulness to me. Oh, morning by morning, great is your faithfulness to me. And all fear, be reminded, my future is secure. 'Cause my Father has spoken, and He keeps His every word. All fear, be reminded, my future is secure. 'Cause my Father has spoken, and He keeps His every word. Father, I'm just so thankful in the midst of darkness, I can claim that promise that you have said my future's secure, God. Lord, and there have been times in this past season where I have not felt like my future's secure, but yet you say, you speak into that void, you speak into that darkness, and you say, no, this one's mine. And I have promised a hope and a future. And I'm standing in the confidence of that. I'm standing in the goodness of that today. I'm standing in the goodness of that next week when things get hard. I'm standing in the goodness of that when things are easy, when they're light. I'm standing on that in grief. I'm standing on that in joy. I'm standing on that in pain, in depression, in worry, in celebration, God. That you've said my future's secure, God. And that's where my trust lies, Lord. That's where my confidence lies. It's in you, God. Amen.
It's so great to worship together. There are a whole lot of great things going on in the life of Crosswinds Church, so let me tell you about just a few. First off, we are continuing our Sunday morning in-person outdoor gathering at 10 a.m. in the Grove. If you haven't had a chance to join us for that yet, there is still time. Please reserve your spot online through our website, where you can also register your kiddos for Sunday camp during that same time slot. Sunday camp is basically our normal kids experience, but right now it's all outdoors and arranged for kids K through 5 and also middle school to be in the same groups every week. Also, we have more good news. Starting June 13th, we will be having 2 Sunday morning services, one outside at 9 a.m. and one inside at 10:30 a.m. Our outdoor service has been really special in sort of a trimmed down way, so we're gonna keep doing that together outside in the mornings at 9 with more time and space for worship and the message. And then indoors at 10:30, our service will have all the things that we loved and were so used to pre-pandemic. So that's creative elements, worship with the whole band, and our normal Sunday message. We are so excited to get to offer both of these options, freeing you up to choose whichever service style you prefer. One important distinction is that our kids and middle school ministries will only be offered during the 10:30 service. As we get ready to go back inside in June, Kids Ministry is rebuilding our volunteer teams to serve with the kiddos during that 10:30 a.m. service. We need your help. Crosswinds is a family, and we can't do what we do without volunteers, especially in our kids program. Some of you love working with kids, and we have places in the classroom for you. Others of you prefer to be a little more behind the scenes or even helping to welcome or check in our kids, and we have places for you too. To find out more, you can email Zach or Simone. Whether you've ever volunteered in kids ministry before, would you consider saying yes to it this time? This is a yes that gets multiplied as we get ready for June 13th and going back inside. Today's the first Sunday of the month, which means we have pastors and elders available to pray with you. If you would like one of us to pray with you or pray for you, we would love the honor of doing that. Reach out at this email to have one of us contact you for prayer. Finally, we are so grateful for how you've continued your generosity in the midst of such unusual times. There are 3 ways that you can give to Crosswinds. You can mail a check, you can give online through our website, or you can text the number on your screen. Today, Chris has another lesson for us to recognize that we might have learned in the dark. Check it out.
Let's see. How to describe what I do? Well, clients invite me to help them grow in awareness. Family members and coworkers might describe my clients as oblivious or selfish. But I like to say they are squinting through life, and I help them open their eyes.
My number one value? Good question. I'd say it's organization.
Great, we need that. Did you bring your resume?
Oh, yeah.
Many of my clients see themselves one way, but in reality, they don't quite live up to that perception of themselves. There's a disconnect. My job is to fill in the gap. So it sounds as though sugary foods might be an avoidance factor for you. Are there any other areas that you might be overlooking?
Well, I don't think so.
Just the simple awareness of those around them can be something my clients lack.
I tried this new Thai restaurant the other day.
Oh, really? How was it?
Oh, it was great. I had Pad See Ew.
Okay, what's that?
Well, it's a flat noodle with... Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see that. I'll take it off speakerphone. It's a flat noodle with veggies and sauce and meat.
Sometimes my clients struggle with how to read the room. What's appropriate for sharing? So this time, let's remember, keep your personal life out of the work conversation.
Affirmative. So you can imagine growing up in a family that tries to avoid conflict at all costs. It gets me really sweaty. I mean, when I fight with my wife, it gets me so uncomfortable. Oh, sorry, I should stop. But I really am sweaty.
Often my clients think they're helping a situation, but they're actually making it worse. Well, it looks like you're ready for another session.
Oh, I'm just finishing this. I've been practicing from our last session, awareness at home.
Are those dishes clean?
Yep.
The answer is no. It's okay. We'll get there.
So I want to do something today as I open that it's not my usual, maybe even our usual here at Crosswinds. Usually we open a little bit lighter, a little bit funnier. We're going to get to some of that, but today I want to just read you some verses out of the Bible written by this guy named David. And I want you to hear what he has to say about God and God's knowledge of David, how well God knows him. And I want you to think just for a moment about how well God knows you. This is from Psalm 139, David writes, "O Lord, you have examined my heart and know everything about me. You know when I sit down or stand up. You know my thoughts even when I'm far away. You see me when I travel, when I rest at home. You know everything I do. You know what I'm going to say even before I say it, Lord. You watched me as I was being formed in utter seclusion, as I was woven together in the dark of the womb. You saw me before I was born. Every day of my life was recorded in your book. Every moment was laid out before a single day had passed. How precious are your thoughts about me, O God. They cannot be numbered. I can't even count them. They outnumber the grains of sand. And when I wake up, you are still with me." Crosswinds, God knows you. He knows everything about you. But today, as we start, I want to ask you a question. How well do you know yourself? All right, let's have some fun. I want to take advantage of the fact that you are watching this. We're going to take advantage of the fact that you're watching this on your TV or a phone or a computer. I want to try something with you that tests your vision, okay? But what I need you to do is stand up wherever you're watching this. Hopefully you're not on a BART train or you may lose your seat. But I need you to stand and put yourself in a place where you can move further away from and then closer to the screen that you're watching this on. If it's a TV or a computer, it's easy. You just stand in front of the TV, take about 10 steps back. Make sure you're eye level, though, with the TV. If you're holding a tablet or a phone, I want you to stand, but you don't need to mount your device somewhere. Just hold it far enough away from your face. Turn it horizontal. Make sure you go full screen. Today, we are talking about blind spots. And I know that when I say blind spots, you and everyone else think about driving. The blind spot's what we call that area just to the back left or the back right of your car that you can't see with your mirrors. You were taught in driver's ed, don't just check your mirrors when you're changing lanes, but turn your head over your shoulder, check left, check right, check your blind spot to make sure there's no one there. Well, I want to show you right now a different kind of blind spot with this thing, this experiment that I want you to do. And again, it's going to take you standing up in front of your screen, so get on your feet. Yes, even you watching in bed, and get in front of your screen somehow, about 8 feet away if it's a TV or a computer, arm's length if it's a handheld device. Get eye level, and let's try this. All right, I want you to look at this graphic. Again, make sure you're positioned a little bit back from the screen. Looking at this graphic, you see what I see, a green square with a plus sign on it on the left, and then a bunch of red polka dots on the right with one yellow polka dot in the center. Okay, here's what I want you to do. Get your head so you're looking straight at the image, and then cover your left eye. Use your left hand, cover your left eye. Now, while your left eye is covered, look at the plus sign with your right eye. And I want you to, as you keep looking at the plus sign, keep your eye on that plus sign, but let your brain pay attention to what's happening on the right side of the graphic. Again, looking at the plus sign the whole time, let your brain see what it's starting to see on the right side as you slowly move closer to the screen. Again, don't look at the right side, just stay locked in on the plus sign, but let your brain notice what happens on the right as you move slowly closer. Here's what you're looking for. Pay attention to what happens to that yellow polka dot. At some point, it's going to disappear. And in fact, there's a really good chance it's going to turn red. Again, depending on the size of your screen, you could be 4 feet away, you could be 8 inches away. I'm going to leave this graphic up so you can keep trying it, or maybe whoever's with you, everyone can have a chance at this. But what should happen is that at some point, as you're moving closer to the image, you are discovering you have a blind spot. All humans have these in each eye, and I don't want to bore you with this too much, but what's happened is your retina transmits what it sees to the optic nerve. Your optic nerve sends that message to the brain, but your optic nerve ends in the retina itself, and because of that, it blocks a little part of your retina from working. So there's a part of your retina that doesn't see things where the optic nerve is in the way, a blind spot. Now, here's where this is important for today. Rather than having a little black area in your vision all day long with what you're looking at, because your blind spot's always there, rather than that, Your brain, your magnificent brain, fills in the gap. Your brain looks at the surrounding information, red polka dots, and even though your retina does not see a red polka dot there, your brain tells you there's a red polka dot there instead of the yellow. Did you notice as you moved that yellow polka dot turned red? Your brain uses the other information around that blind spot to tell you something is or isn't there, and it fills in the gap. And as a result, you go through your entire day, your entire lifetime really, never aware of the existence of blind spots with your sight. Well, probably not a big deal, because you're constantly turning your head, you're moving your eyes. It doesn't take long for the rest of your retina that does work to give you the correct information. Not a big deal. But what if I told you that your mind does the very same thing when it comes to blind spots in your character? Remember, I asked at the beginning, how well do you know yourself? Can we all just admit for a moment, we are not perfect. And more than not perfect, we're flawed. We have character flaws, right? In fact, can we admit that it's possible that there are some things about us that might be problematic that we don't see? You saw that in the short film we made with the guy who hired a coach to help him get better at seeing what he didn't see. These are blind spots, things about us that we don't know. And what I will tell you is that blind spots have the ability to destroy your life. In 1989, a United Airlines flight took off from Denver to Chicago, and there was a fan disc in the rear engine of this DC-10 that exploded. When it exploded, it severed all 3 hydraulic lines on the plane. There's a 1,000,000,000 chance that could ever happen. Highly improbable. Well, when they investigated it, they discovered a little piece of titanium used to make this fan disc had a tiny imperfection that had weakened to the breaking point. It had a little nitrogen bubble in it that no one had seen. It took 18 years and 15,503 takeoffs and landings to discover this tiny little problem. It had always been there. It just hadn't created a problem yet. But there was a flaw in the core of the system, and it didn't show up for a long time, but eventually it did. It eroded the integrity of the system, and it led to a catastrophe. And you and I, we have flaws in our core, and often we don't see them, we don't know they're there, and pressure hits, or more likely pressure mounts, and we didn't realize it, but this flaw has eroded some of the integrity of our system, and it breaks. We break. Let me be very specific about what I mean when I say that. I mean, marriages break because of a blind spot, and partnerships dissolve, and sometimes jobs get lost because of something somebody can't see in themselves, and friendships get ruined, and sin gets committed. And how well you know yourself could be the thing that keeps any of that from happening, not just how honest you are, but how aware you are. These blind spots can be habits like talking too fast or talking so much people can't get a word in edgewise, just idiosyncrasies. They can be emotions that you feel or moods you get into when you encounter a certain thing and you don't notice that this mood is radiating off of you at those around you. Blind spots can be actions and thoughts and words that you bring into your relationships with others that greatly affect your ability to have those relationships be everything that they can be. And what you need to know is that they can most certainly be sin, things you do that grieve the God who loves you, and they affect your relationship with him. And I think the Bible has something for you to help make you more aware so you can avoid the catastrophe that comes with blind spots. And here's the thing, it's in Psalm 139. What I read you at the beginning, it's within this truth that God knows you better than you know yourself. And David, after spending what amounts to about 18 verses talking about how well God knows him, he decides to address his blind spots. And I want you to see what he does so that you can do it too and avoid the heartache and the catastrophe these things cause. If you're following along in a Bible, I want you to open to Psalm 139. I want to show you the last few verses of the Psalm where David does 4 things, or really, he asks God to do these 4 things so that David can be aware of these things that he doesn't know about himself. Psalm 139. And let me give you the context. For those of you who don't know, David was one of the kings of Israel and Judah. The Bible tells us he's chosen by God to be the king of God's people. And one of the reasons is the person who had been the king right before David was a terrible person. His name was King Saul. And Saul was everything you imagine when you think about what a jealous, paranoid, power-hungry dictator could be. Saul had many blind spots. And I'm going to guess it's part of what causes David to be sensitive and thinking about his own. You ever been the second person to a job? Or I should word that differently. The next person to step into something that somebody else was doing before you, and when you get there, you find that everyone around you has a complaint about the person who was doing what you've been hired to do now. I feel like we've all probably had that multiple times in our lives. I had that at a liquor store I worked at in high school. I had it at a church I pastored. And what happens is you get very aware. Well, I don't want them to say that about me someday, so I better not do this and this and this. All right, that's David. I mean, even God had given up on Saul and didn't want him as king anymore. Well, the story of David and Saul, it spans a lot of text in the Bible. We could spend months looking at that story. But what you need to know for the sake of our time today is that because Saul is threatened by the idea of a future king, he chases David down and tries to kill him. He has armies of men trying to kill David because he's afraid David will overthrow him and become king. Yet the truth is, David's respectful of Saul. He's willing to wait his turn. In fact, David even has a chance to kill Saul, and he chooses not to because he believes Saul was appointed by God. It's not my spot to mess with that. Well, the day comes that Saul dies. He actually kills himself after a battle. His army had been defeated by their enemies. He's afraid of being captured, so he falls on his sword, and David becomes king. And one day, a guy named Cush, it's a great name, Cush comes out of nowhere, and he accuses David of some kind of wrongdoing in the death of Saul. Kind of like David made it happen. Now, I guess I shouldn't say that he comes out of nowhere. Cush had been a follower of Saul for many, many years. Cush is sometimes called Cush the Benjamite because he was a descendant of this guy Benjamin that we read about in the Bible who lived many years earlier. Well, guess who else was a Benjamite? Saul. Cush is just sticking up for the family. We don't read all the details of how this goes down, but we read that David is falsely accused by Cush. Now, there are all sorts of responses one has when they get accused of something. Denial. That's not true. I didn't do that. Or defense. You talking to me? You talking to me? I don't have to listen to you. I'm the king. You're not the boss of me. Even going on the offense is a response, right? Like, who do you think you are? You're accusing me of crimes? Well, I'm accusing you of treason. Right now, arrest him. All of those are options for David. And you can imagine this is a dark moment. He has spent years not fighting Saul or not rallying against him or staging a coup, but instead, David doesn't do any of those three. David asks God to do four things that I want you to see in these last two verses of Psalm 139. Look at what he asks God for. Psalm 139, verse 23. Search me, God, and know my heart. Test me and know my anxious thoughts. Reveal if there is any offensive way in me, and lead me in the way everlasting. Remember, Psalm 139 up until this point is, you know me better than I know myself. But now David says, search me, God, and know my heart. Like, know me more. Test me and know my anxious thoughts. Know me more. Reveal if there is any offensive way in me and lead me in the way everlasting. David prays for God to reveal his blind spots. And these are the four things I want you to see that he asks God to do. The first thing he says to God is, search me. God, would you search me? Would you inventory me? Would you find the things that I cannot seem to find on my own? Would you find the things that are unknown to me? In the 1950s, a couple of psychologists created a technique to help people think about how they relate to themselves and relate to other people. They called this a Johari window. Johari, it's a combination of their first names. One guy was named Joe, the other was Harrington. Anyway, they used a window with 4 boxes. And they said in the upper left box are the things about yourself that you know and others know. It's called your known self. This is a part of you that is real. It's on public display. In the upper right box is what they call the hidden self. These are the things we know about ourselves that other people do not know. It's called hidden for a reason. We intentionally choose not to show this part of ourselves. All right, you have things that you know about you that everyone knows, and you have things you know about you that no one else knows. Neither of these are what David is talking about. David is talking about these two lower boxes. And in these lower boxes, this is where this Johari window gets interesting. These two guys suggested that there are things about you that you do not know. There are character traits, there are flaws, there are sins in your life even that you are unaware of. And sometimes others are unaware of them too, which actually sounds kind of crazy because I can't think of anything I don't know about myself that my wife wouldn't know about me after being married over 20 years. I mean, maybe there's stuff I know she doesn't, but for neither of us to know, in theory, it's possible. And they call this your unknown self. So you've got your known self, your hidden self. They call this your unknown self because you don't know this part of you and no one else seems to either. But there's one other quadrant in this lower set, and it's the quadrant for things about you that you do not know, but others do. And they call this your blind self because everyone else can see it, but you can't or haven't yet. When I was in college, I had a group of friends. We'd spend every single weekend together. We'd go down to the city. We'd go to the beach at Lake Michigan. We'd go rollerblading through the suburbs. We'd go mountain biking through a forest preserve. We'd drive to Florida for spring break, or we'd go to Hilton Head, except for one year. One year, we went fishing a few hours south at this lake called Lake Shelbyville, and we sat on a boat all day in the middle of nowhere without a bite. 2 days, caught nothing. As we're pulling the boat out of the water after the second long day to drive back to Chicago, a guy came up to us and he said, "Did you catch anything?" And we said, "No." And he said, "You're in good company. Nobody's caught anything in this lake for 3 years." All right. Point is, among this group of friends, there was always something being planned that we would go do. And what I did not realize was that I was almost always the one doing the planning. Now, that's okay. Somebody's got to plan things, and if you're wired for it and you enjoy it, why not? But here's the thing. If there are other people in the group who have ideas of what they would like to do, and you never do their ideas, then you're probably a little bit of a control freak. Well, one day, my friend John called me, and he said, "Hey, I need to talk to you about something. Have you noticed how everything we do is always your idea? Chris, we have to do it your way. We got to go to your restaurants. We got to take your car, your timeline, your plan." And I said, "No, I have not noticed that." And he said, "Have you noticed that the rest of us never get to do our ideas? You are so insistent." I said, "What are you talking about? Lake Shelbyville was your idea, and it was terrible, and we'll never do another fishing trip again. I am saving all of us from those kinds of terrible plans." And he said, "Chris, you have control issues. Everyone else sees them, but you don't." And for the first time in my life, I was made aware of something about myself that I did not know about, but others did. Someone pointed out a blind spot. All right. David begins the quest to be more aware by saying, "God, search me. Would you find the things that I don't know that others know? And would you find the things that I don't know that no one knows? Because God, you know me. You know when I sit down or stand up. You know my thoughts. You see when I travel. You know when I rest. You knit me together in my mother's womb. You know everything I do. So God, would you do what only you can do, which is find the things that I don't know?" The next thing he says is, "Test me." David says, "Test me." Now, I don't know what you think of when you hear "test me." It almost sounds as if David is saying, "Make my life hard." Because we have this way of thinking of our hard times as tests that we've gone through. All right, here's the problem with that language of test, at least in modern times. Tests are usually given to you nowadays by somebody in authority, right? Your teacher, your professor, the DMV. They make you take a test. If you're a high school or college student and you read David say in this verse, "Test me," you think, what is wrong with this guy? Because tests are the way that my teacher determines what grade I get, how good of a student I am. If there were less tests or even no tests, my status would be very different. I'd be all A's. The tests are what bring me down. This is not what David meant. What David is talking about is what an ancient person would do when they would test a metal like gold. Now, let me stop right there, because even what I just said about testing a metal is misleading because when you hear test gold or some other precious metal, you imagine a pawnbroker or a guy at a gold and silver store, one of those eye things who's looking to decide whether gold is real gold or fool's gold, or maybe it's some other kind of metal you can kind of put through a chemical test to know if it's the right thing. And because we picture that, we think, well, maybe David is saying here, all right, well, test me and show what is real in me, but that's not it either. To test a metal or try a metal in David's time, here's what it meant. It meant to take a crude metal, refine it in a fire, and see that it gets made pure. A crude metal would need to be purified into a pure and precious metal through a refinery, through a process that pulled all the crud out. And what David is praying here, he's saying, God, I am in a fire. I'm not asking you to put me in one. I'm in one. Would you use it to refine me, to take the crud that's in me and in this fire and burn it up and make me closer to pure? Think about this. God, you know me, you know me, you know me. Even then, would you still search me for more? And then would you use the fires of my life? And by that, I mean this pandemic, my job loss, my divorce, the conflict I'm in with my family, the trouble I'm in with my finances, the health problems that I've been diagnosed with. God, I know you didn't give these fires to me, but I've got them. So will you use these somehow to refine me? That is a powerful prayer. Now, here's where this gets interesting. Third thing David says, reveal if there is any offensive way in me, or some versions say, reveal any wicked way in me. God, is there sin in me? Is there anything I'm doing that is hurting you, that it's hurting other people? The literal translation is, God, show me if there is any hurtful way in me. I want to see myself honestly. Would you move me from the lower windows of things about me that I don't know to the upper ones, things I now know that you've known all along or that others might know? You guys, that is a powerful prayer right there. Reveal the junk in me. Show it to me. That takes guts. God, I don't want to be blind to my flaws and my faults and my sins, so I'm asking you that you show me. That takes guts, because if you ask God to do that, he will. Now, let me show you the fourth thing. David closes saying, lead me. Lead me in the way everlasting. What he means by that is, God, there is a way that you would have me live, and it is better than my way. God, I don't want to have you clean up my life only to get lost in the weeds, stray from the path again unknowingly, because I don't always know what I'm doing. So would you lead me in your ways? Search me, test me, reveal to me, and lead me. We have been in a dark time. There's a light at the end of the tunnel. We're coming out of this. But before we leave the darkness of the tunnel completely, can I challenge you? Could it be that God wants to use this time to reveal to you some blind spots? That the God who knows you better than you know yourself also knows that right now it may be easier to show you some things than later when you're distracted and it gets harder to notice? Could it be you've got some blind spots and your brain has been filling in the blind spots with fake information to make you think that everything's normal in your character? Could it be that internally there's something that you don't know about that's weakening your system, your relationships, your work, your everything, and you don't know it, but at some point that little bubble is going to cause a catastrophe? Can I challenge you to pray this prayer of David's? Search me, test me, reveal to me, lead me. Would you find some time this week to go spend it with God and ask him to do those things? Would you just go for a walk with God and ask him, search me? And while you walk, just listen to what he might tell you about you, because there is a God who knows you better than you know yourself, but he loves you more than you love yourself. And because of it, he wants to save you from this stuff that you don't see. Let me pray for you before we go. Let me do that. God, I want to ask that you would search us this week. God, would you search us? Search our hearts. Find the things in us that others see that we don't, or that no one sees that you do. God, would you test us? people who are in a fire right now, God, would you use the fire to purify us and to make us more like you? God, would you reveal to us all that we are missing? God, would you show us the blind spots that have been just, that we've been tricked into thinking are not there. Our brain fills in other information and we think our character, our integrity is everything it needs to be. And then God, would you lead us in the way everlasting? Would you show us your way instead of ours? God, I ask that you give our church the courage to pray that kind of prayer this week and to listen to what you might have to say. And all God's people said, amen.